video before you watch this video. It's just my thoughts on true crime and where true crime has been going and heading lately, so I really would appreciate it if you would go watch it. Yes, this is another true crime video. We are redoing our H.H. Holmes video because it was done so long ago and there's so much more information that I did not cover. So yeah, I am so pleased to present H.H. Holmes, the not so cool killer. I thought he was much cooler, but he's really not. I hate to say cool killer because, like, people suffered, but when it's like told to you, like, oh, he built this murder castle and he, like, 200 people died, and it's like, oh wow, but like in reality it was like maybe 20. So we've got Bryan, we've got Depraved by Harold Schechner. Schetcher. There's no N in that. Schetcher. We also have our handy dandy outline as well. This is probably going to be a 3-part video. So this is going to cover his early life, his first 2 marriages, and it'll stop right as he's building the murder castle. Dun dun dun. So, are you ready? Because Bryan's ready and I'm ready. So are you ready? Good. So, this is H.H. Holmes. He was an American con artist and serial killer operating between the years of 1891 and 1894. So about 3 years. His career included insurance fraud, forgery, swindling, bigamy, horse theft, and murder. He confessed to killing about 27 people, but some were found alive, so the true number is really hard to tell. So he's most notoriously known for his murder castle, killings during the World Columbian Exposition in 1893 in Chicago, or the World's Fair. As I said, he's suspected to have killed between 20 and 200 plus people, but due to the sensationalism in journalism and ineffective police work during the time, his crimes have been greatly exaggerated, and therefore make it hard to ascertain the real account. Holmes was also a notorious liar. He lied about everything. He gave various contradictory accounts of his life and crimes. So some have described him as a swindler first and a serial killer second, meaning that his murder was more to, like, get rid of people who were, like, in his way or to hide the truth. It wasn't necessarily to appease some great bloodlust that he had. So his early life, he was actually born Herman Webster Mudgett. Yeah, you heard that right. Herman Webster Mudgett. On May 16th, 1861. So he just had a birthday not too long ago. He was born in Gilmanton, New Hampshire. His parents were Levi Horton Mudgett and Theodate Page Price. Theodate is a great name. A great name. They were actually both descendants from the first English settlers in the area, and they were both devout Methodists. As with many serial killers, he didn't have the greatest childhood in terms of his relationship with his father. His father was a bit of a drinker. He liked the booze, and he reportedly mistreated the family. He worked as a farmer, a trader, and a house painter, so kind of all over the place. Herman, little baby Herm, was said to be unusually intelligent and bullied by his peers. There was actually an incident where he believes that his fascination with death was derived from. We're going to title it the Skeleton Incident. I actually have a quote that I'd like to read, so I'm going to set Bryan down. This is from Depraved by Schetcher, the shocking true story of America's first serial killer. It's always used in H. Holmes. Like, Schetcher is like a pretty good writer, but I know some of this stuff is not, like, he wrote this a long time ago, and it was before all of this new stuff came out about H. Holmes, so we're gonna take it with a grain of salt, you know? This happened like 200 years ago too, so 100 years ago, so like, you know. So it says, even at 11, he knew that his will and intelligence required an infinitely larger sphere of operation than New Hampshire could possibly afford. Everyone remarked on his sharpness. A boy with a head on him, the neighbors would say, a lad with a future. Partly because of his delicate stature, but also because of his success at school, Herman had been persecuted by the bigger boys in town, especially during his earlier years. One episode in particular remained with him for the rest of his life. It happened when Herman was 5, the year he began school. The way to the schoolhouse ran past the village doctor's front door, which was rarely closed. Emanating from the gloomy interior were sharp medicinal odors, associated in little Herman's mind with the vile nostrums he was forced to imbibe whenever he was ill. Partly for this reason, and partly because of certain dark stories he had heard from his schoolmates, the office had assumed a terrifying dimension in young Herman's imagination. One day, having learned of Herman's horror of the place, 2 of his older schoolmates waylaid him while the doctor was out on an errand and dragged him, struggling and weeping, over the terrible threshold. Through his tears, Herman could make out a ghastly specter, a leering skeleton hovering in the shadows like a demon risen from the grave. Herman's cries turned into terror-crazed shrieks, which only spurred on his tormentors. They wrestled him closer and closer to the looming skeleton, which seemed to reach out its bony hands as if to seize the boy in a fatal embrace. At that moment, the doctor came hurrying back to the office and, sizing up the situation at a glance, began shouting at the 2 bullies, who let go of Herman and raced out the doorway, leaving the hysterical boy gagging and sobbing at the front of the mounted specimen. Ironically, it was to this dramatic experience that Herman later attributed his interest in anatomy. So that's interesting. So, that happened. And like I said, he was bullied by a lot of his peers. He did have one friend. He was described as a lonely child other than this one friend who actually died of mysterious circumstances while playing with Herman. We actually have a quote from the Schetcher book. Let me bring it back up. For a brief period during his childhood, he did have one close friend, an older boy named Tom, who died under tragic circumstances, falling to his death from an upstairs landing while he and Herman were exploring an abandoned house. Herman never missed Tom. He much preferred his solitude, which gave him time to plan, scheme, and dream of the day when he would finally leave New Hampshire forever. Scary. And that's not even just like a Schetcher like quote. Like, it is, but like, it was said that he said, no, I don't really miss Tom all that much. This little boy was psychotic. So he, like I said, he was good in school. He, nothing else really happened. He collected little dead things and liked to, you know, pick at them and look at their anatomy, and he would, like, before Tom died, he'd show Tom, but that was it, you know, he kind of just went on his day. So the first of his many wives was a Clara Loverling. They married on July 4th, 1878. 1878. They had one child together, but she leaves in 1884 due to his violent behavior towards her. Shortly after, or actually, I'm sorry, during their marriage, he enrolls at the University of Vermont in 1879. He transfers to the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery in 1882. He was a mediocre student, but graduated in 84, the same year that his wife left him. 2 years later, in 86, he marries 24-year-old Myrta Belknap in Minneapolis, Minnesota. He does try to file for divorce from Clara, but he never finishes the process, and the case was dismissed on June of 1891, I'm sorry. If I ever say 19, just know that I mean 1891. So, and this says a lot about his character. He does this a lot, where he'll, like, start something and then just never finishes it. That's just an H.H. Holmes classic. So at this point, he has 2 wives and 2 children, as Myrta and Holmes have 1 child together. It was a daughter named Lucy Theodate Holmes, who was born in Inglewood. So while he does business in Chicago, he does actually live with Myrta outside of Chicago in Inglewood. He begins calling himself H.H. Holmes in Chicago at this time. It's believed to avoid being caught for any previous insurance scams. He facilitated in med school with his classmates because he did do that. They did the whole dead body thing. And it's also believed that there was a possible homicide of a young boy who had taken medication that Holmes had prescribed to him while he worked at a pharmacy in Philadelphia. So at this point, the story gets a little murky. Mainly because there's 2 possible ways that it went down. The way that it's always told and the new information that has come about. So he begins working at a drugstore in Inglewood owned by an Elizabeth Holton. Holton said that he was hardworking and well liked by the owner. But as I said, there's 2 versions. So the first version is the one that we all knew, and that's that he began managing the drugstore. He eventually bought it from the elderly couple and made payments, but when the payments stopped, she sued, but then abruptly disappeared, with Holmes stating that she was visiting family or on vacation. He would always, like, give an excuse as to why Elizabeth wasn't there. Many believed that he had killed Elizabeth to get the deed to the drugstore. But while I was researching, I found a couple articles that stated that Elizabeth might not have been as elderly as she believed. In fact, was about a year older than Holmes, with 2 young children. She gave up the pharmacy to Holmes so that she could raise her children, but was very much alive and lived not far from the pharmacy and later the murder castle. So as I stated, most books and stuff say the first version, but there are articles that I discovered that state that she was not killed by him, as there are census reports that list her and her children living a few blocks away from the castle, and even living much longer than Holmes did, almost 15 to 20 years longer after he was executed. So because of just all of the sensationalism and how long ago it was, it's hard to know which one is the truth. regardless, Holmes ended up with a drugstore that he ran for a while until he decided that he wanted to sell it. He sells the drugstore to buy the empty lot across the street. He actually swindles somebody in the process of doing so. I like using Bryan because he's so colorful and we're talking about like something kind of sad. So tell me if you'd like me to use Jeff. I can use Jeff. I've got other ones too. Like I've got Ken and Barbie ones. I just like the way that he sounds, you know? Anyways, so he just can't not swindle somebody. This man loves a good swindle. He loves to get over on people. That's why like I said, he could probably be called a swindler first. He buys the lot across the street. And as he's doing so, he like brings in new people to look at the old drugstore. And he's like, it's fully furnished. There's beautiful countertops, you know, the drugs, the pharmacy, all of this. And the buyer's like, bet, I love it. Let me have it. As they're signing paperwork and the money is transferred, Holmes takes every single fixture. I mean, countertops, lights, cabinets, everything. He completely strips this building and puts it in his new location so that when the buyers come, it is completely empty. They thought they were getting like this fully furnished, ready to use pharmacy, and nope, they got an empty building. So this lot is where he begins to work on the murder castle. It was a 3-story building with his living quarters on top, apartments on the second, and the drugstore retail space on the bottom. And this building was so sensationalized. I know I keep using that word, but it was like there was so much written about this building that was just false. It was just like create headlines and generate cash, you know, like why true crime now, right? So like during his arrest, tabloids published various lies about the nature of this structure, and we've all heard them, between the hundreds of rooms laid out like a maze with hidden rooms, torture chambers, trapdoors, greased chutes, gas chambers, basement crematoriums, as well as like dead-end staircases and windowless rooms. Like, none of this was found to be true, and the fact that so many people believe it, even I believed it. Like, go watch my old H.H. Holmes video. It's crazy to me that like this is still being said that happened. It was the 1890s, for Christ's sakes. Like, why 100 rooms in this it was not a big building. Like, this is the building, okay? It's not that big. Where are you putting these hundreds of rooms? So after his arrest, they found that the building was kind of unremarkable and uncompleted. Yeah, uncompleted. It remained uncompleted until the day that it was burned down, which we'll go into. This was due to Holmes's constant disputes and disagreements with the builders and the contractors, and even creditors. There were rumors that he constantly hired and fired builders and architects so that Holmes would be the only person who understood the full plan. There's even a story about Holmes asking a builder to drop a brick on a random person on the street, stating that it was his brother who owed him money or something. Like, it's crazy. There's another story of a furniture creditor not being paid. So when they come to like repo all the furniture, it's gone. Like they couldn't find any of it because Holmes had moved it into a room, had builders knock the door down, seal over the room, and like look like it was just a wall. There was a man that is kind of considered the caretaker. Some people believe that he probably helped Holmes with the murders. Patrick Quinlan. He informs the creditor company that Holmes had done this for $50. He charges them $50 for this information. And in the process of finding the furniture, one of the movers puts his foot through the ceiling, and Holmes sues the furniture company for $75, which was of course thrown out by the courts. So we're going to end part 1 with the bank vault story from Depraved, because I think it's just another, like, it tells his character, if anything. So let's see. So from Depraved, it says, the construction workers cheated of their pay weren't the only ones who came to regret their dealings with Dr. Holmes. So did the suppliers who provided the new building with its various and often highly peculiar appurtenances. I don't know how to say that. There was, for example, the enormous safe, as large as a walk-in bank vault, that Holmes purchased on credit before his building was half completed. When the vault was delivered, Holmes installed it in a vacant area on the 3rd floor of the building, then constructed a room to contain it, making sure that the doorway was so small that the safe couldn't possibly pass through. When Holmes, in typical fashion, failed to meet any of his payments, the safe company dispatched a crew to repossess the vault. Holmes offered to let them remove it, but warned that if they damaged his building in any way, he would slap the company with a ruinous lawsuit. The vault stayed where it was. Holmes employed a similar stratagem to acquire the other accoutrements he claimed to require as part of his pharmacological pursuits. These included a massive kiln fitted with a cast iron door and a grate that slid in and out on rollers, a large zinc tank, an assortment of vats designed to store corrosives such as acid and quicklime, and enough asbestos-covered sheet iron plates to line the walls of several rooms. Like, it's just, why? Why would he do that? It doesn't make sense. It didn't happen. The bank vault did happen, but nothing else happened. It's so crazy to me that we would all believe this as fact. Alright, so that is part 1 of H.H. Holmes. It'll probably be a 3-parter, so look out for those. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed seeing Bryan. My upstairs neighbors are being very loud, so I gotta go. Bye, guys. Leave a like, leave a comment, and subscribe if you're not. We'll see you next time.